So that's what we'll be talking today, creating engaging, inclusive and accessible PowerPoints. A lot of this will be sort of talking about PowerPoints in general, but also will be sort of a little bit geared towards the media production side of things. So if you're going to be creating some media for your courses, just talking a few aspects about how to make that a little bit more accessible and a little bit more engaging as well. So before we go too much further, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodianship of the lands on which we meet today. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. And we, of course, recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So as I briefly mentioned then, we're going to talk about creating engaging, inclusive and accessible PowerPoint. So talking about accessibility standards, including the PowerPoint templates that we have here at UQ. So having a bit of a talk about those and how they work, particularly things around colours and contrast standards and those kind of things that just help your PowerPoints be far more accessible to more users. Also a little bit about design theory, so how you actually improve the look of your PowerPoints and make them a little bit more engaging and how to lay them out a little bit nicer. Practical advice on acquiring graphics and resources, so just showing you where you can go to get images and videos and sounds and all that kind of stuff that you might want to use within your PowerPoints and your teaching more broadly. And also just a little bit, if we have time, a bit of student feedback on media use in teaching in general. Did a bit of work with CCATs last year about how media is received by students, and then we've got a nice little bit of feedback at the end to sort of show you what students think of media use within courses. All right, so we'll jump straight into the first aspect, which is accessibility, which is obviously an incredibly important element to keep in mind, really during the entire process of creating your slides. It's making your content much more usable to as many people as possible. And just to note, there's many different aspects of accessibility. There's people who have accessibility issues such as they might have low vision, might have hearing issues, they might be neurodivergent. There's a lot of different kind of considerations that we need to make. So the first aspect I want to talk about is low vision. So statistically, globally, 2.8% of people are affected by low vision, some sort of low vision, and low vision is considered sort of an uncorrectable visual yes, the slides will be available at the end. Visual impairment other than blindness. Oh, and by the way, Ben is going to be monitoring the chat, and he can probably answer any quick questions because he's a bit of a guru with this as well. Whack some stuff in the chat, and Ben will sort of monitor that. And if anything needs to be flagged with me, I can pop on. So low vision is yes, an uncorrectable visual impairment that other than blindness. So statistically, 1 in every 50 students you could teach could have some sort of low vision. And it's quite interesting that a lot of people may not know, but they've heard of this 20/20 vision. And I find it quite a fascinating kind of measure of vision. It comes from the Snell and I chart, which basically we've probably all seen it with like rows of letters that get smaller and smaller. It's not the one depicted on screen here, but you've probably all seen it. So the first number in 20/20, this is the distance in feet of all things, you stand away from this chart. And the second number, this indicates the distance in feet in which a person with normal vision can see the same line of text clearly. So if someone's considered to have 20/70 vision, it essentially means that they must stand 20 feet away to see letters that someone can see at 70 feet, which is quite interesting. So if you have I'll say that again because it was a bit confusing. If you have 20/70 vision, you must stand 20 feet away to see letters that someone with 20/20 vision can see from 70 feet away. It's kind of an absurd way to measure it. It's quite confusing, but anyway, that's what the 20/20 and 20/70 numbers when we're talking about vision. So that's something that we do need to have a little bit of a think about when we're creating our slide decks. The nice thing is that there are lots of accessibility guidelines out there. I'm going to provide quite a few links to that, but one aspect is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and this is a set of accessibility standards for online content. Now, it is generally designed for web development content, but it's still very relevant for anything you see on screen. So any PowerPoints you create or videos or presentations or online material, you can actually head to this website and essentially learn all about how you can make your stuff a little bit more accessible online. It's like contrast ratios and text sizes and all that kind of stuff that really, really is quite important. So getting to something like contrast ratio, so this is quite an important part of the standards I just mentioned. So contrast ratios, they will help you produce content for low vision and make it far more accessible. And essentially, it's just making sure that there is a contrast between any text you have on your pages and the background. So, it's measured as a ratio. So essentially, it's two numbers, the lightness of the two colors. So example, this first one here says 20:1. So that is black and white. So that's the highest contrast ratio, where one color is completely black and the other one is completely light. So the size of text can actually also influence what contrast ratio you can actually use within a document. So, the smaller that a text is, then obviously you need a much higher contrast ratio. So, if you had something that was like a light grey colour and the text was quite small, then it would be quite hard to read. Whereas if that same text size was, say, black on white rather than grey on white, it'd be much more clearer. So, for example, for a font size of 18 point, a minimum ratio of 4.5:1, that's that grey colour, is needed to meet this standard. And the nice thing about the contrast ratios and all these other aspects is they're actually built into the PowerPoint template that we can actually provide you. Now, interesting enough, the actual official UQ PowerPoint template is not as accessible as the one that we've actually created here for our videos. So our template tends to have a little bit more information in it about the kind of colors you should use, about the font sizes you should use, etc. So that's this document here. So this is a PowerPoint template that we can actually provide you, and I'll send you a link to this afterwards. It is based off the standard UQ template, so it has all very, very similar pages to that, but it has far more information about the sort of colors you should use. It talks about things about composition, which we'll also talk about today, font sizes, also talks about how to sort of tell a story in your slide deck as well. It also goes into other information about attributing, referencing. So it really is an all-round guide, not only just for accessibility, but to use in general. So I'll provide that to you and a little bit more accessible. That one's not on the DEM, no, and it's not a new slide deck, no. It's one that Italy produces ourselves because we do a lot of, and you'll tell it's sort of produced by us is because it's actually got references to slides that we do when we're recording in our studio. So if you're not going to be recording in our studio, which most of you probably won't if you're going to be using this just for your own teaching, you can kind of ignore those slides and just use the information here that sort of is much more helpful. Yeah. All right. And also you'll notice here that this slide is intentionally blurry because it's sort of aimed to show you that this slide here is actually designed to be, a good contrast of text and also a good size of text. So you can see that most of that text is still quite readable within the template, even if it is a blurry. So it's mimicking what someone might see if they have low vision. Of course, some of the really small numbers underneath are a bit small and a bit blurry and hard to see. That's a bit of representation of what might happen when your text is a little bit too small for people to read who might have low vision. So if any of the colors that you're thinking of using your PowerPoint templates, in your PowerPoint are not listed in that template that I will provide, and you just want to check to see if the colors you are using, text and backgrounds that do have good contrast, then you could also go to one of these contrast checkers as well and just see if what you are producing actually does fulfill those criteria. All right. Another thing to consider is color blindness. So this can affect, up to 4.5% of people, and it's something else to consider. And it's interesting that it's actually higher in males. So you'll find that 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women will be affected by color blindness. Now, unfortunately, in our sort of slide decks, this can't be obviously corrected, but you can accommodate for it. So it's more about rather than trying to sort of change all the colors within your slide deck, it's more about using color more appropriately and not using color as an identifier or not using it as the only way to specify something within your PowerPoint. And a good example of that is money. So if you reach into your pocket and you bring out some money, you can see that the money is all different colors, and you probably just know if you've got a blue note, it's $10, you've got a red note, it's 20. But for someone who might be colorblind, then they see a lot of those notes as very, very similar colors. So of course, the good thing about currency is that it has different ways to identify what that note is. So it doesn't just rely on color. So you have numbers on there. They are different sizes. There's other, there's tactile elements built in as well. So, and that is how you can think about when you're designing your slide decks, is that don't use color as the only way to identify certain parts of what you're trying to describe. So for an example here, if you have a graph for population growth in Australia, on the surface, this looks really great. Nothing wrong with it, really, you'd think. You sort of say, oh, yeah, so if you look at the orange section, you can see WA's progression. The problem is, with someone who's colorblind, they may see the orange as very similar to the yellow, so they won't know the difference between them. So it's important when you are using colors like this that you add additional identifiers to your graph to show, all right, Western Australia is, yes, it is orange, but also you have a pointer that goes to it. So it's very important to indicate that color with an identifier. And so, yeah, just very simple changes that you can make. It makes a huge, huge difference. Some other considerations to think about as well is consider using the Italy PowerPoint slide template, because we've gone in there and tried to make that a bit more accessible than the standard UQ one. And also we've kind of made it more geared towards sort of screen recording use and self-recording use. So it's much more versatile. So if you're going to be recording your PowerPoint slides with a voiceover, they're certainly much more geared towards that as well. So, and as I said, it still has all the other standard slides in there. So I know that UQ is sort of updating their branding. So there's going to be probably some changes to that. So we've got to get on that in the next little while to have a look at that new branding. So yeah, so that may change. So we might have to go in and adjust all those. But for now, this is probably the older branding. But we certainly need to get onto that and have a look at the new branding that's just recently come out. So yeah, all your videos that you have should have captions. So when you're in a lecture theatre and your stuff gets recorded in Echo, it'll go up to Echo, it'll get captions automatically applied, which is really good, and that should always be applied. But what you should also do is go in and correct them as well. Is you can go into your Echo recordings, you can go in and you can fix your captions. That was some of the CCAT feedback that we got a while ago, was that students really like to have corrected captions in their recordings. That was something that came through quite a lot, actually. So that's very, very important. You could consider turning on your captions for PowerPoint presentations. So if you're doing a delivery in a room, you can turn on captions in your PowerPoint as well. Ironically, I don't have them turned on mine, but you can turn them on here. So it makes it a little bit more accessible in the room. So yeah, so that's another consideration that you could make. Not quite sure why it hasn't worked, but anyway, normally it does. Microphone use is very, very important. So whenever you are in a lecture situation or in a tutorial room, ensure you are always using the microphones within the rooms, making sure that if it's a lapel, that it's clipped on correctly. If it's a handheld, you're using it appropriately, just so you make sure that your voice definitely gets captured to an echo recording, but also much more clearly in the room. Also, consider creating high quality videos and don't rely on echo capture for all your content. We have found, again, through CCAT feedback that some of the content that is recorded in lectures tends to get compressed quite a lot. The quality isn't very good. Even the audio quality gets quite low. So yeah, what we kind of push here at Italy with our media productions, we create really nice, high quality, clear video material that sort of doesn't get affected by that lower quality when it's captured in the room. So that's sort of a consideration. If you are finding that your lectures are being captured low quality on echo, it could be a consideration to change the way you deliver the lectures. It might be a case of pre-recording those lectures in a much higher quality, much more engaging way. Also, just small things like using clear and direct English, so avoid ambiguous phrases or terms. So I have this every day with my team here. I'll say something like, "Oh, it's not a sheep station," as in it's not a big deal, and they're like, "What the heck does that mean?" And so you have to think about that for your classroom as well, because you have people who are, also international students who don't know the lingo. So trying to keep things fairly clear, so there isn't any misunderstanding with any phrases. Adding alt text to images where possible. So, oftentimes when you're uploading images to somewhere, it'll give you the ability to include alt text. So that's text that will often pop up. Maybe if you just hover over an image, or if an image disappears, it'll pop up and say what that image was, or accessibility screen readers as well, that they will read that alt text so they can identify what that image is without having to see it. And using descriptive links instead of URLs, so students can make an informed choice to click on them, which is an interesting one. So instead of just having just a URL that is quite long and can feel quite confronting to people, some people may not want to click on that. An example here is just a nice, clear, exact link to what it is, rather than having just a big long link that may not even describe what it is. It may just be a whole lot of numbers and people may not want to click on it. Also, avoiding things like flashing content in your delivery, or if it's a necessity, obviously warn people about that, because some people are sort of sensitive to that. Files, make sure that the files are named clear and consistently. So if you're giving files to students, name them clearly, and also ensure that they're spelt correctly. Consistency is good, so file naming consistency as well. So your weekly stuff is labelled week by week and very clearly named. Just small, simple little things you can do. There's lots of detailed accessibility information from the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training. So this is a really great resource here that has a lot of information about inclusive teaching that you can go through. And also Blackboard has accessibility overview as well that you can look at to make sure you're creating your Blackboard courses accessible as possible. And there's also lots of other resources within UQ as well. So you consider taking some training modules in designing effective inclusive learning environments at UQ, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander core cultural learning, and LGBTQ IA plus awareness training as well is also available online at UQ as well. So really good resources there for you to consider. And also keep up to date with the Blackboard Allied deployment. So the Blackboard Ally is an accessibility tool that it integrates into Blackboard Ultra, and it helps staff to understand accessibility issues with Ultra courses. So it actually has an instructor feedback panel, which basically can check your course and give you feedback on how to fix it. So yeah, check out that link, have a look at it. The website's a little bit confusing. It sort of seems like it hasn't been rolled out, but it has. So check that out and have a look, and that can sort of certainly help make your Blackboard courses far more accessible. All right, so let's have a little bit of chat about design principles. So how to make your slides actually more engaging, just simply by making them look better. And there's a few different tools that we can actually use for that. And some of them may seem quite obvious on a service, but once you sort of realize, okay, yeah, that does make sense. It's like using consistent fonts, using consistent colors, consistent icons, that, can make my slides look better, but also can improve accessibility as well. Because you'll find that people who might be neurodivergent, they tend to really like consistency with things. They like consistency, they like order. So even just naming things correctly and having consistency with your slide decks and things like that can also help people in that fashion as well. So a lot of this consistency with using the correct fonts, using the same type of dot points, using the same type of colors and keeping icons consistent, that can generally just be satisfied by just following the PowerPoint slide deck templates. So if you tend to stick to that, you can tend to satisfy a lot of what I'm saying in this presentation, which is a really nice aspect of the slide deck. So it's a matter of things like if you're creating graphs, in this example here it says A, for example. If you have another example and another slide that's talking about the same subject, A, keeping that particular color consistent. Just little sort of things like that, and it's just a nice way of keeping it all look nice and professional as well. Proximity. Now, I actually suffer from this quite a lot when I'm looking at something. And so, for example, you'll have an image and you'll have some text beside the image. And I think, oh, what piece of text goes with what image? And so proximity is something to really consider of where you put your text in relation to the image that it's associated with. It's just as simple as just separating, adding a bit of white space around your objects and your text, just to ensure that it is very clear what you're talking about in relation to the image it's talking about. And this can be, in Blackboard or really anywhere that you're creating a document. So that is quite important. It makes things very, very clear. And it's funny that, when I go onto websites all the time, and I see an image and there's some text under it, I'm like, does that go with that image or does that go with the one above it? So having a bit of space around things really, really helps. And talking about white space, don't be worried about using white space. White space or negative space, it's the space around objects. It's the idea that the space around things is as important as anything else. It stops things from looking too cluttered. It's as simple as, and again, if you follow the UQ, the PowerPoint guides, it's all built in. It's a matter of just respecting the margins, respecting space around text, not having text too close to images, like right up against them, not having images too close to the edge. What we kind of say is that it's okay to have a little bit of white space because what you're saying in your lecture or whatever you're recording will fill in the white space. So you don't need to feel like you have to fill up an entire slide. And a lot of people make that mistake. They will try and put far too much onto one slide, almost replicate the entire of what they're saying. And then the problem is you have a very cluttered slide. And I think I actually mentioned this in a few slides up, but what you'll find is that if you put all the text of what you're saying onto a slide, people tend to will read through it faster than what you're saying it, and you'll probably lose engagement. As well as contrast being a good accessibility tool, a lot of people forget that contrast also means the contrast between things. So the contrast between the size of fonts. So that's quite important because it contrasts, it helps to establish a hierarchy of things. So contrast can be the variance of color, the variance of size, the variance of shape, or the size of text to emphasize different aspects of your document. So of course you've all seen, you have a larger piece of text for a heading, maybe a slightly smaller piece of text for a subheading, and then the body text tend to be a bit smaller. So creating just the contrast between text. But it's also an important consideration when you're doing things like creating graphs or diagrams. So ensuring that the difference between one part of a graph or diagram is very clearly different to another. So in this particular case, the contrast between the A statistic and the B statistic is very, very clear. So even someone who has low vision, is colorblind, will be able to differentiate those two values very, very easily, because it's quite a high contrast between those. So yeah, a very, very important aspect, as well as being accessible. So yeah. Alignment, again, a very, very sort of forgotten aspect of when you're creating slide decks, is to have things nicely lined up. Alignment improves clarity. It doesn't help improve the way I say things. Alignment improves the clarity and helps create connections between things. So keeping objects aligned, it makes your presentation look neater and much more easy to understand. So the objects can be aligned vertically, horizontally with other objects, as well as aligned within the page itself. So for a lot of people, it may go unnoticed, but when something is off, you're like, oh wow, yeah, that is off. You only really notice it when it's a little bit off. So it's just a matter of just the other thing is, actually, so I'm jumping ahead of myself here, is that PowerPoint actually does have really, really nice alignment tools in it. So when you're dragging an object around, you'll often find that it has like a little crosshair and little things that'll sort of lock into other things. Objects will kind of lock together. You'll have little guidelines later to line things up. So it has really, really nice alignment aspects in it, which is really, really handy. Also, having a bit of a think about what you actually include in your slides is also important. It can be quite daunting to think about what do you include, because some people might think, oh, well, I'll include sort of all text, or I'll include all images, but really you need to have a bit of a think about how you can sort of break up your slides and make your slides a little bit more interesting by adding different things. So it's as simple as just thinking about what kind of images you might want in your slides, adding dot points, adding graphs to show information instead of just having the information listed just in text. Diagrams and icons, there's lots of nice icons built into the templates as well. So yeah, it's important to sort of have a bit of a think about what kind of things you might want within your document, and quotes as well. And as I mentioned before, yeah, don't reproduce your script on the screen. Most people can read faster than you will say it. So this is quite important. All right. And the other thing is, don't tell them, show them, guide them through the visuals. If you're presenting your slides, it's a nice idea to, as you're speaking, to have things pop up and things, fade in. So if you're introducing, a new set of values, have that nicely fade in. Circle some aspects of your graph to emphasize that particular point. So we did also find with the CCAT feedback that when lecturers were sometimes speaking to graphs, they weren't speaking, so it wasn't easily identified what parts of the graph they might have been speaking to. So, the lecturer might have said, oh, so, so in this particular point, it went up, but there's not actually any indication what point they're actually talking to. So just having things like red circles pop up and things of that nature, arrows coming in, to sort of clearly identify what you're speaking about at that particular time is a really, really nice way of ensuring that. It also ensures accessibility as well, because some people just won't know what you're talking about, might not be able to see it or hear it. So having more visual and more cues in there can help with that as well. Timing your shots, it's always good to try and avoid having blank shots for too well. So what I mean, and when I say shots, I mean slides. My common thing is to talk about shots because we're so used to here at Italy talking about shots in terms of video shots and when you're recording shots. But yeah, it also means to time your slides. So you don't want to have a blank slide for too long because some people might think that something's gone wrong or whatever. So yeah, it's always good to have something happening on your slides or some kind of text popping up. And also, is something happening visually? Is enough stuff happening visually? Are images popping up? Is text popping up? Are things happening on screen that will sort of pique people's interest? So I think that's also quite important. And that is as simple as just having, your text animate in, or it might have, things circling or arrows pointing or things like that. But yeah, it's nice to have some things happening within your slide as you're speaking. Sorry, there are a few questions popping up. I'll have a look at those in a moment. So yeah, another thing we sort of got out of our CCAT feedback that I did allude to before is some students mentioned that some of their slides either had far too much text or far too much imagery that didn't have captions or any text sort of explaining what the images were. So that's quite important as well. So sort of striking that balance between text and imagery. So, and also keeping that consistency in your slides as well. So, yeah, so the feedback kind of stated that students sort of preferred when you do have sort of quite image-heavy PowerPoint slides, that you ensure that there is some kind of text associated with those images that identifies or just talks about what that image is, rather than just having the image sit there without any text identifying what it is or what it's for. And the same with having too much text in slides, not having any kind of imagery next to it, even if that bit of text may not need any imagery. It might be nice just to find a stock image or something that you might be able to put in there to kind of accompany what you're saying, to sort of increase that engagement and make your slides look a little bit more engaging. And it's also a consideration to have a think about when things might appear and what order they appear when you are speaking to it. Now, this is probably less likely to happen when you're in a lecture situation, because you're probably going to stay on the slide for a little bit longer. But if you're, say, recording your slides, you're pre-recording them and presenting them later on, or putting on echo or wherever, you might be working through a sentence. And as you're talking through that sentence, certain things are popping up. And maybe things might pop up right towards the end of the sentence, and then you switch to the next slide, and it hasn't given the person enough time to sort of digest what's actually happening within that slide. And that can be as simple as just rearranging what you might be saying to make the information come up more slowly, and give the people a better, be able to have them absorb the information a little bit better. So, if for example, you were creating a slide and you were speaking to the slide and you were saying, you can clearly see how something is affecting both these graphs when we compare them. All right, so you've got these two images popping up when you're speaking that sentence. So, some people might be inclined to have that first image pop up right at the start, which you probably would. You can clearly see how something is affecting both these graphs, but then they might not have the comparison popping up until really late at the end of the sentence, meaning that you might then skip to the next slide and there's not enough time for people to digest. So just sort of rewording what you're saying to something like, if we look at these graphs and compare them, you can see something is affecting them. So having the comparison come a little bit early, because the comparison is sort of more important than the original graphs, because the graphs are still in the comparison, but you're more wanting to focus on that comparison. So just changing the way you might say your sentences to have images come up and stay up a little bit longer. Again, more likely for stuff you might create or pre-record rather than a lecture, but still something to consider. Sourcing and referencing images. So there's quite a few places that you can actually get images for your slide decks. And so you can get some copyright images from Adobe Stock. So we all have access to that through UQ. So you automatically have access to Adobe Stock, but there are other stock sites that you can get where you can pay for those images. There's also lots of free image sites, which tends to be the more preferable way because obviously, you know, it's free. But of course, there are considerations in terms of how you reference those that I'll talk about in a moment. So there's quite a few different options there, but also have the UQ Dam as well. So the UQ Dam is a good resource, not only for a lot of templates that you can use, but also images as well. So quite a few different places that you can actually get your images from. And, you know, even the Adobe stock, it's kind of hidden away that there are quite a few free video resources available there as well. It sort of tends to be a little bit harder to find the free video content on the Adobe site, but it is there. It's just a matter of going into kind of the image filters and stuff and making sure you tick free, etc. So a little bit hard to find, but there are free videos there. The other thing to consider sort of in this day and age now is AI imagery. So we do have a bit of advice around AI imagery because UQ has what we call sort of an authenticity policy. So they want to ensure that anything we create sort of is authentic and it's not trying to be something it's not. So the general advice is that if you're generating images for your courses, you want to try and avoid generating images that contain people. Now, that's only you know, if the problem is that there's sometimes going to be images that you simply cannot find. And that's the advice that I've sort of received, is that if there's images that you simply cannot find anywhere for whatever reason, it's very specific, and sort of the only way you can get it is by generating it, then that's okay. But you have to ensure that any image that is generated does look as real as possible. So you don't want, you know, two hands. You don't want like 3 hands and 12 fingers or whatever. So sort of ensuring that it is quite accurate, and that's very, very important. So yeah, so generally try to find real imagery, but if you can't and it really is important to your teaching, then you can generate images that sort of feature people. Don't use AI to alter the hero person in an image. So if you have an existing image of someone or something, don't use AI to sort of adjust that person in that image. You can use generated imagery for scientific and abstract applications. So, you know, if you're needing to visualize something that you know doesn't exist, or whatever, maybe you just want to visualize a DNA strand or whatever, then you can use AI imagery for that, as long as it sort of looks as accurate as possible. Just remember that anything created via AI doesn't have any copyright, so other people can sort of use it. And of course, referencing AI, and the advice that we've got is that when you are referencing AI, and I think this might be a little bit of a deterrent for using AI imagery, is you need to put in the reference like on the slide with the image, which can make things look a little bit ugly. So if it's something that you might have got from Adobe stock, then generally you can just write Adobe stock generated with AI. But if it's something that you generated from scratch, then generally putting the prompt somewhere near the image that you generated is sort of the way to go. And again, I think it's a bit of a deterrent because they tend to not look very nice when you're putting giant references all over your slides. Copyright types. So when I'm talking about copyright types here, I'm mainly talking about how you actually put them into a slide deck when you're wanting to reference items. So in our slide deck that we have really nice templates here that sort of show you how you can attribute your slides. So when I'm talking about copyright types, so someone just put out that CC is technically, you're right, is many journal the Creative Commons license or open license, not copyright types. That's very true. Yeah, so when I'm talking about copyright types and sort of like how they're listed in our attribution tables here. So generally, at UQ, you can generally use kind of anything, um, as long as it's referenced appropriately, and sort of that sort of sits under the statutory educational license. So you can generally use content as long as it's sort of used for internal, and you reference it appropriately. And the nice thing about our deck here is it talks about the referencing in quite a lot of detail. So yeah, there's actually like dedicated slides in here that sort of talks about that. So it talks about that, how to do it, the rights and the wrongs of that. So that makes it really, really nice and clear. But also this slide here sort of talks about the different types of copyright types and also Creative Commons types, and where you can and can't use those. I recently did a Creative Commons course, and what I was able to do through that is I did a lot of assignments, and I was able to bundle all that together and create a bit of a copyright and Creative Commons and open educational resources kind of H5P that kind of talks about what copyright is, what Creative Commons is, how you get access to open education resources. And I think someone mentioned somewhere here about the open education resources is, UQ has a lot of stuff on their website, and I've got links in this document as well to that, whereby you can go on there, have a look at all the open resources that are available to you. There's a lot more out there than you probably think. But yeah, this H5P sort of take you through copyright in terms of sort of using an educational context, and also Creative Commons. So it's a really, really good course. So I recommend, if you have any PD money available, it's certainly quite a good course to have a look at. One of the last things I want to have a bit of a talk about are some media takeaways, key takeaways that we got from the course. It's the course is what's it called? It's just the Creative Commons certificate course, I think it's called, isn't it? I think it's just Creative Commons certificate. Yeah, but if you look that up, it's a really good course. It is a bit intense. It's like I think it was a 10-week course, and there's quite a lot to it. There's lots of assignments, and you really have to make them fun in order to enjoy it. So that's what I had to do. I had to make them fun. I had to do posters and did a video and stuff. So yeah, you have to make it fun in order to enjoy it a bit, because it can be a little bit dry, but worthwhile. So CCAT feedback. So this is sort of getting a little bit away from sort of the slide deck stuff, but I just wanted to bring this up just in case people wanted to create any educational media for their courses, and just wanted to give a bit of information about what kind of media that our students are liking, some of their key takeaways about media use within courses. And because my team here creates educational media content every day, and we're certainly wanting to sort of promote our services as well. So this is a bit of a way for you to access our services by giving you a bit of information about how media is regarded by students. So we certainly found that overall use of media within courses is certainly very well received. We certainly found that the students like watching pre-recorded videos. So these could be videos that you literally you have a PowerPoint slide deck, you record the stuff yourself, or you come to us and we can create lecture material for you in our studio here. So they really like the flexible viewing options, being able to watch it before class and then come to class and discuss it. Also really like the use of where you have like an interview with industry experts. So having guest presenters who are from industry or interviewing industry experts, they really liked that diverse perspectives. They did recommend that lecturers speak a little more slowly to just ensure you're more inclusive with what you're saying, which sort of feeds into that use of less jargon as well that I mentioned earlier. And also ensuring transcripts are correct. That was one of the biggest things that came out of a lot of our research, was that transcripts were bad in echo recordings because they were automatic. and they weren't going and corrected. So yeah, if you do have capacity, go in and correct any transcripts along the way. And obviously spelling mistakes is a small thing, but having no spelling mistakes in your lectures. And also length as well. So that's sort of one thing about maybe producing your own content instead of presenting lectures is you can shorten them, you can chunk them up into smaller. So if you have lectures at an hour, you might be able to try and condense them into something shorter or chunk them up into shorter, more easily digested pieces for the brain. So yes, that's a lot of feedback we got there. And also, with your supplementary materials as well. So if you are having any sort of videos that you create that involve PowerPoints or other kind of media, ensure that that's sort of supplied as a PDF so people can go in and they can search that information. And just across the board, it was just, increasing the use of images, illustrations, diagrams, animations, videos in teaching. That was certainly something that came through, sort of using that instead of like a lengthy lecture delivery. Ensuring that any images that you might have in your slide decks do have some kind of captions or annotations to indicate sort of what's happening or what's being spoken about. Because sort of if you're just speaking about a table and there's sort of no pointers to that particular table or pointing to what you're talking about, that can be a bit difficult, especially if it's pre-recorded and you're not there in the room, maybe pointing at something. Quality assurance as well, so just ensuring that's like high quality, particularly with the audio, so microphone placement's important. Also, just in your presentations that you create, try and have higher quality images, graphs, whatever. And if you can't, then it might be, having to recreate those graphs or sourcing high quality images. And that's, again, something that's interesting that came through from our feedback was much higher quality imagery and sound when it comes to their learning. And of course, this is a bit harder, creating engaging content through, teaching material that has skits or videos with practical or fun elements. Of course, coming to us is something that we can certainly help you with that. Yeah, so, and someone said something about what's a good size. Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. We try to sort of keep a lot of our stuff between sort of the 5 to 6 to sort of 12-minute mark for any content that we create that's sort of content delivery in terms of like lectures and things like that. I know lectures can go for much longer than that, but just sort of trying to find ways to sort of break that down into shorter chunks. Obviously, not everything can be short. You might have an interview with someone that might go for a little bit longer. Because it just needs to go a bit longer. So like a podcast, for example, they can tend to go a bit longer because a lot of times there's no visuals for them to look at, so they can just put it in their ear and listen to them. So yeah, because we always say this, that students have little pockets of time that they're running between buses, they're on trains or whatever, and so they're sort of more receptive to those sort of smaller chunks of video. Because if they see a video that's like an hour long, they'll be like, oh, I don't know if I have time. But if they see a video that's, 10 minutes long, they're like, oh, I'll watch that. And then they like that video and then they'll go, oh, I like that. I'll watch the next one in the series. And so, that's always something certainly to consider. Just having a look through, there's a lot of comments. I might have to digest a lot of those comments and maybe type some of them out. But yeah, I'll have a look through some of those comments and maybe type something out because there's quite a few that have popped up there. And that'll also ensure that I get all the information correct as well. But yeah, so we're at sort of 10 to the hour. I'll certainly be sharing this slide deck with everyone, and there'll also be this recording shared. So everyone can sort of watch it and have a look through the slide deck. And also you can click all the links that are in there as well, or just, try and steal some of the links that have been put into this chat here. So yeah, I'll look through all those past comments and sort of get back to you on all of those points just so I make sure I get everything correct. But yeah, and I think there is, and also just one really cheeky plug for our services. So yeah, if you ever want any assistance with with creating educational media for your courses, certainly we can be engaged with that. And again, that's sort of why a lot of the information that I've been saying today is probably being geared towards, using a slide deck and recording a slide deck and sort of maybe creating a lecture from that. But that's because what we do here every day. So certainly something that we can help with. But of course, there's a heck of a lot of information in there as well that can help you for your in-room deliveries as well, making things far more accessible and making your slide decks look a lot nicer. So yeah, and I think there is a feedback thing that's going to pop up at some point. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Yay. All right. So yeah, certainly helpful to sort of know if these kind of sessions are useful and how we might be able to improve them. So certainly send that our way, and I will certainly send a follow-up email. I should be able to do that today. I might be able to get the recording today. We'll see how I go. But I'll try and shoot something through as much as possible. So, all right. And if you ever need to contact me directly with any questions, either just do a bit of a search, or my email is on the screen there. So, yeah, thank you everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully the weather won't get any worse. I know a lot of people are going to be probably taking a bit of an early mark today. But yeah, thanks everyone.